Well, I did it again. I hit a rank I feel widely unqualified for, this time being Celestial, the third highest rank in the game. But unlike before, I have an idea as to how I did it. That being the GM is riddled with Nimrods, and not the kind of Nimrods that adapt to every situation and are good at what they do. Although one thing they got in common between each other is that some of the common Nimrods also hate minorities. Now let me tell you of one of the worst things I've experienced in my climb. The goddamn British. I've been saying it for years. We should liberate them from their Britishness and Americanize them. Those bastards play Scarlet Witch, unironically. Which that isn't too bad since I play a decent amount of Magneto. But what isn't so good is having a Scarlet Witch on your team, as opposed to literally any other DPS that isn't your average Black Widow or Mr. Fantastic. Although there's no doubt they won't miss any shots on Scarlet. So they will do some damage, at least. But they will also get on mic and show that British pompous attitude. Mind you, they will not call out anything, which is probably for the best, and it's also for the best I don't get started on the French. Which may be better than the British, since I can't understand half of the stuff they say, but still, the French. Alright, here's the thing. It's been well over 30 seconds into the video, the brain-rotted crowd has left, and we can get into some things of substance. Substance-ish. So when I hit GM, I said, I don't care which hero you play, just get value. And I still believe that, to a point. Even though that little crash out on Scarlet might lead you to believe otherwise, I'm still of the mind that as long as you get value, it doesn't matter which hero you play. Now that being said, that doesn't mean I'm saying pick, insert currently niche and weak hero into an unfavorable comp. I'm saying maybe don't pick Rocket as the second support, cause if the enemy team has 2 defensive ults, you're at a disadvantage. And if you don't have the bucket team up, then even more so, because now there isn't a reason for a support main to pick Rocket. But if you're feeling as a DPS player who doesn't play much of the other roles, that's a completely different story. I would like you to fill on support as Rocket, then play tank. Now some of you filthy Raccoon mains and defenders are saying, he's not the worst support, he outputs a consistent amount of healing and is very survivable. Would you rather have a Jev? I won't delve too deeply into Rocket in this video because I believe this stinky trash panda has a lot to be said about him and milked out of him, so a topic for another day. As for now, I will encapsulate what Rocket is with one sentence. He's Mercy with rabies. Just like Mercy, he's never really bad. But as Mercy is good with Pharah and never really a great pick, so is Rocket with Bucky or Punisher and in a triple support comp. So what I'm saying is he's consistently solid, but his peak on his best scenario is the lowest out of all the supports. Jeff in a triple support comp with a Luna brings more to the table than Rocket in a team with Bucky and Punisher with a triple support comp. With Jeff, you get a solid flanker DPS you can't kill, who also heals in his best scenario. So yes, I would rather have a good Jeff in his ideal situation than a good Rocket in an equivalent situation. The same with all the supports, even if on average they're not as consistent as Rocket, a Celestial Mantis main is far better at the game than a Celestial Rocket main. So I would rather a Mantis who is as good at Mantis as the Rocket is good at Rocket in their best situation, because there's more to her kit, if that makes any sense. How this connects to me is that you can say with your mentality of as long as someone gets value, it doesn't matter which hero they play. Rocket shouldn't bother you. And yes, Rocket gets value by just holding left trigger on Xbox and placing a goddamn res beacon that seems no one except me shoots. So if you're not literally brain dead in a coma, just by existing he gets value. But the problem comes when I'm playing with a second support Rocket, no Bucky or Punisher, and the enemy team has a C&D and an invisible woman. Or any support duo who have 2 defensive ults, because Storm ults, we use our defensive ults. Then the Star-Lord ults, and we're dead. So every time I see this bastard, I feel God is punishing me for some wrong I've done in the past. I don't care he has the highest support win rate and one of the highest in the game, because he might just be the only character whose win rate isn't even close to be considered an indicator. Yes, win rate compared to pick rate isn't concrete proof of how good a character is unless a character is broken. Even then, you need to consider other quantitative and qualitative variables. But back to what I was saying. He's the only hero whose win rate compared to his pick rate doesn't show how good he is, but shows how bad the enemy team is on average, that they can't deal with a rocket. So I've talked about characters I very strongly dislike on my team. Now let me talk about the cancer characters to fight against. First, I play mostly tank with a little support. On tank, you already know Wolverine's the first out.
Go and get a job!
But now, unlike before, you can play a thing mag who come close to shutting him down because they're already a bit annoying to play into as a Wolverine, and I play both so I can fill into that comp. He's not as much of a problem as he was, but one character who is at least bad to play into on every hero I play, and is a nuisance like no other for almost every other character on the roster, and that character is Groot. He makes it hell to do your job on tank as Mags, Strange, Thing, and Hulk a little. Because no one shoots the damn walls. They're not just obstacles that block sightlines and damage, which is already pretty good. They also do damage. If Groot or his allies do damage while in Groot's little area of effect, those walls whip the players near them. They get value from just existing in okay spots, and most of the player base, Bronze to Celestial, don't shoot them. My guess as to why is that it isn't fun to shoot them while you can shoot a player and get a kill, which there's no denying feels good. And plus, it can be hard to know when to shoot the walls, because when you focus on the walls, you take pressure away from the enemy team, and in neutral, it can be hard to decide where to shoot them and prevent the Groot from blocking sightlines and setting up basically kill boxes, or the enemy team and take space. So, Groot is yet another great enemy of solo tanking. You can tell I've played my fair share of games like that, and one's too many against a good Groot. And speaking of games I've played, I wanted to look at 10 of my games up to the point I hit Celestial for the second time. 5 wins and 5 losses. It might not be the best sample size, but I just want to see if according to my stats I got boosted to this rank, and I also wish to run a minuscule test on this engagement based matchmaking I hear so much talk about, because as it is, with no results to speak of, I feel that when I win my games, the enemy team gets mollywomped, and whenever it's a close game, I lose. Time to flaunt that C- equivalent statistical knowledge. So after a bit of time in Excel, I summed up all the averages for the match, my teams and the enemy teams. Don't worry, Zoomers and Gooners, I won't go too deep on this. I know your attention span can handle it, and nobody's here. Well now, out of the 10 game sample size, I never underperformed my team's average, win or loss. These are all 10 games, I never went support, and much less so DPS, so I have no healing stat. And just for the actually punks like me, no, I didn't play any penny, therefore no healing coming from me, the tank. And it means I wasn't outperformed, since that's not a responsibility for my role. So loser's queue is totally real, and it's the fault of engagement based matchmaking for putting brain rotted stepchildren in my games. I never underperformed, the statistics are with me. Now it's high time I got to rag it on how this table and stats in general are not very good indicators for performance. First off, this is a simple table in data, since it doesn't include more detailed stats like objective time, or more importantly, when and to who the healing was done, for example. Second off, and I'm done with the offs, it's as mentioned a very small sample size. It can't possibly be a good insight if stats matter or not, because it isn't broad enough to conclude if value gained trumps raw stats. Nor can I prove my status as boosted or the existence of loser's queue, because again, there isn't much data here. Even though there's been some redheaded stepchildren in my games, we don't know if they just gotten off a bad game or are having a bad day, because this kind of stuff affects the human psyche if you acknowledge it or not. The player could be an otherwise good player, but the game you could be the exception and not the rule. I'm not saying you can't flame them though. Now, even the account competitive win rate isn't the best indicator of a player's quality. But don't get me wrong, if you have a win percentage in the 40s and it's like that because you have 20 plus losses over your wins, you may not be the best player and may have been susceptible to some boosting. I say may because loss streaks happen to everyone, even though you typically average it out if in the same skill range. I'm still gonna leave some room to plain bad luck and human stupidity. Who knows, you may have had the unfortunate occurrence of constantly being queued up with a Jeff one trick in a dual support comps. I'ma still flame you, a little, because it's pretty unlikely to have that kind of win rate. I have a 49, roughly 50% one with the draws. You take out the draws, I'm a good old 50. I was on 51% when I first got there. Yeah, I might just be a little touchy on the subject. And one thing I didn't take into account for this little research is swapping into different characters or classes, but it should be since if one round you play a DPS and you go Rocket in round 2, if we logically assume the teams are equivalent in skill since it's a ranked game, you will see your final hits and damage plummet under a team's average as well as the game's. Even though the Raccoon bastard does a lot of damage, you're never gonna take your finger off that healing orb button. But also, if you swap between heroes in a role, you'll at least notice a damage decrease. An equally skilled Strange will do more damage on average than a Cap because of qualitative variables like Cap's playstyle being slower in comparison to Strange's burst damage style. Which segues me into my next topic. I've been mentioning value in comparison to raw stats since we all know the scoreboard doesn't mean squat really. But yet the same we hold in religious reverence when flaming a fool. And there is some merit to that because if a DPS has more deaths than kills with not very many final hits or a bad KT in general, they deserve a little flack since they're underperforming on what their role is meant to do, get picks, secure kills. But even if on a character who does a lot of DPS they don't get more than the other duelist on a team that has a more middle of the range damage output, it's not underperforming without the full context, because they could be the first to get a pick in a fight, and that pick being a support, therefore if not secure in the fight for their team, then putting it in damn good favor for their team. Or they stagger an enemy, so they buy some time and put their team in a more advantageous position if the enemy team decides to have a fight. Not to mention value that isn't stat related. A personal example, I was on Hulk, enemy Strange, TP to point, my team had killed one of their supports, I kept on pressuring the Penny at their spawn so she doesn't go through the portal, and when their invisible woman respawned, they focused on healing them and not the people on point. So my team cleans up and we win that round. And there isn't really a feasible way to measure this kind of value. Not really an issue, but with the new upcoming season slightly changing how you gain points in ranked, it came to mind as a possible issue, even if a small one, since if your plays lead to a win, you still gain points and climb. But if you lose, and if it's thanks to a stats merchant who much rather be the one to heal the critical tank while they have full ult charge and you don't, you theoretically get punished for prioritizing value by leaving your other support to get ult charge while you have yours full and don't go for stats in a scenario you lose the game. Speaking of issues, rejoice, Doom scholars, your attention will no longer be strained, if you can say that. But nevertheless, this part, I guess, should be easier on it. I guess. So back to talking about my first world problems. Grinding the rank ladder like I did to get Celestial was very grating for me. Seeing my number continuously go down during a loss streak gave me a headache. And it really wouldn't go away even if by some chance I climbed back to the rank I was on the same day. And you know how the red-headed stepchildren in your ranked game irritate you in a good day, it was doubly so during a losing streak. You see your Spider-Man who asked we ban Namor get diffed by the enemy Spider-Man, and it tilted me more than it should. But it's a good thing I keep the mic a mile away. I only got the chat to talk crap through, and when you have to type every word out, it gives you a bit of time to realize that what you're doing is stupid. Sometimes. Now, when I didn't climb back to the rank I was on the same day I dropped, I didn't want to play the game the next day. The sleeping helped with the headache, but it didn't remove that feeling of not wanting to get on the game, which is sad because I quite like the game. Love it might be more accurate, but in vain hopes of avoiding another toxic relationship like the one with Overwatch, I just want to take it slow. I can't hurt again. All that being said, playing the game isn't my job, and believe it or not, I have a life. I have friends too. You know some of those. So yeah, playing a game that doesn't have a story to see through or some other kind of goal or motivation aside from seeing my number get bigger, it just seems like I'm wasting my time, my life. Now, as any man, I do love me winning and I do be competitive, but it ain't for me. I'm not gonna say it's wrong or right, because if you want to pursue it and it seems right for you, slay. Get that number to be the highest you can. As for me, am I going to grind for a higher rank next season? Well, much less than I did for Celestial this season. I happen to be solid at the game. I don't want to lose that. But there isn't really anything enticing me towards grinding for higher ranks. And I also doubt I have the skill to make it to eternity. I mean, I'm closer to top 500 than you are to me, alright? I could if I wanted to. I just don't. But honestly, I make some completely brain-dead decisions in my games. I use some cooldowns just for the hell of it. I know they're mistakes, but I just don't care. As well as I like that kind of eternity and top 500 thinking. I know the game, but there's this thing called sampling bias where because of your limited access to people or data, leads you to believe in conclusions that aren't indicative of the broader population. So what I'm trying to say is that running into fellow GM and Celestia players and hearing their game knowledge, mind you not game sense, but knowledge, these are morons. How could they not know what to do in this, or how do they believe that's correct? Which leads me to think I know the game better than them. This is all hearsay, and it sometimes turns out I'm wrong and I learn something new. Only some very rare times though, because I'm never wrong, you see. Now, is there something I could tell you to help you climb? Well, if you're playing tank and if you're interested in playing Hulk, then I think you should learn Venom instead. He can dive in more regularly, is much easier to play and better at contesting point, just plain better at diving. Though I don't think he's a much better character than Hulk, he's still a little bit better in some situations. But if you like Hulk and want to play Hulk, but not Hulk, you can play the better Hulk. Here's the thing. He does what Hulk does, but better. He can disrupt the enemy team and stay in a brawl for much longer, as well as do more in the brawl. He has more escape tools, his charge for one, and his damage reduction ability, which sends you to one of your allies. He's easier to play, and I think from there arises a problem with mid-tank players getting a lot of value from him, but absolutely crumbling against another skilled tank player, because one of the best counters to a tank player is another thing. The reason being that tank survivability tricks you into thinking he's tankier than he is, and so mid players use their charge to go into the enemy team and they slam, thinking they can use his leap to get out. But the enemy thing just needs to use their charge and earthbound you, and that's how I've diffed many a things. His ult is also very solid, rock solid. It's not the best, but if you can just secure one kill with it, you've gotten a lot of value from it. It charges very quickly, and if you get a support ult out of the enemy team, it's a damn good trade. But as I think the thing, he's not a good solo tank, just as Hulk in that regard. A bit better though, if you're forced in that horrendous situation of having a solo tank comp. For the best tank in the game to help you climb and is the best in general, I think it's Magneto. Groot is stronger, but Mags is more versatile. You can play him with any comp. He's very solid, he's got good survivability and a good team protection with the bubbles and shield, good damage, and he can counter support ults. I say can because it's dependent if you land the ult or not. Although it's too often that I leave it in Locke's hands and Jesus takes my death ball and hits the cloak and dagger for me. So the other role I can somewhat tell you something about is support. Honestly, I would love to play more support games. It's just that a tank is needed more often, and when a support is needed, I sometimes don't feel like it. Oh, woe is me with my first world problems. Anyway, I like playing support. I'm not as good as on tank, but I can tell you it's hard to carry on support, at least for me. I can't make as many plays and get picks like I can on tank. I don't have much power to dictate the game as I do on tank. The biggest thing you can do to change fights on support is ult at the right times, and that just so happens to be a weak spot for me. It's because I don't play enough of the role, even though it's the easiest role when these characters aren't in the game. Because when they are, it's a survival horror game. I don't want to play support then. And a tip I'd give you that many support players don't seem to know is always heal your fellow support. Peel for them. Look, I empathize with you support players. I know how it feels to get dove and your team not give a damn about you. I'm just saying, love each other enough to heal one another. Not even love the other support, just want to win the game. To conclude this, triple tank is cancer and so is Gluten Wolverine. Good luck and get lost. Back to dying at Diablo 4 hardcore for me. Seriously, it isn't my fault most of the time. It's quite weird.